Most people never lose the battle in the arena. They lose it in their own minds, long before the fight ever starts, before the first risk, before the first investment, before the first early morning, before the first uncomfortable conversation. They surrender in silence. They sit with a dream, fragile, electric, alive, and instead of feeding it, they interrogate it. They measure it against their past mistakes. They weigh it against other people's opinions. They hold it up to the cold statistics of what usually happens. And slowly, almost invisibly, the dream begins to suffocate. Not because it wasn't possible, but because belief was never given permission to breathe. Failure does not begin with action. Failure begins with doubt that goes unchallenged. A man can survive 1,000 external rejections if his internal conviction is intact. But if he rejects himself once, deeply, emotionally, finally, no opportunity on earth can save him. That is why most people fail before they even begin. They have been conditioned to distrust their own imagination, to call it unrealistic, to call it naive, to call it dangerous. From childhood, they are taught to color within lines drawn by people who themselves never dared to redraw the page. And so, they shrink. They shrink their goals to fit their environment. They shrink their standards to fit their circle. They shrink their ambition to avoid criticism. But here is the truth history whispers to anyone willing to listen. Everything extraordinary was once unreasonable. When Thomas Edison declared he would harness electricity in ways the world had never seen, he was not applauded, he was doubted. When Henry Ford envisioned automobiles for the average person, experts insisted it was fantasy. When Walt Disney spoke of a magical kingdom born from imagination, bankers laughed him out of rooms. They did not succeed because the world believed in them. They succeeded because they believed before the world did. And that is the dividing line. Most people wait for evidence before they commit. They wait for reassurance. They wait for someone else to nod in approval. They wait for a guarantee. But success has never handed out guarantees. It hands out tests. The test of whether you can hold a vision when there is no proof. The test of whether you can act when fear is loud. The test of whether you can decide without consensus. The moment you say, "I'll try," you have already weakened your foundation. The moment you say, "Let's see what happens," you have quietly prepared for retreat. The men and women who transform their lives do not try, they decide. Decision is a spiritual act.